What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the No Cap Space. I'm Tyler DeLuca, joined by Andrew and Greer. And today we got a guest, which means we're stepping into the luxury tax today. USC head coach Lindsay Gottlieb. Lindsay, oh my goodness. This has been a week or so for you. You could say, have you had a chance to kind of take a breath and reflect on the fact that your team just won the last Pac-12 tournament championship?
A little bit. I think it was this Wednesday, a week ago, that we were just leaving. So it has been quite a week. Somewhat. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on. Appreciate you guys, what you do for women's basketball and the support. But we got home on Sunday night, tried to take a couple days, we're giving a couple days off of practice, but it's been a whirlwind, all good. So many people reaching out, a lot of excitement. And, I want people to take a minute to be in the moment and appreciate what was done, and we'll get back to work when it's appropriate to do so. We get back to practice, but it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you for joining us. And I was at the Pac-12 tournament. I got to experience that firsthand and cover this run that you guys went on. One thing that really stuck out to me, and this is something that's been going on this entire year, was pregame, they play a video from Cheryl Miller. And we're not going to comment. Andrew Luck sent one in for Stanford. It didn't hit the same as Cheryl Miller's. I'm not going to lie. Cheryl went on for like a whole minute and a half and had me ready to go storm the court and get ready to play too. Like, she has been, like, it looks from the outside looking in like y'all's number one fan this entire year. Having a player of that caliber, a legend of that caliber, be so hands-on with this program and in the forefront, how has that been for this program this year?
I can't even really describe it. Can you guys see behind me?
Oh yeah, we see. Yeah. We got the mural in the background. Like,
great branding, great salesmanship.
That's right. There's Cheryl right there. One of the first things I did when I got here was, put these legends on the wall. I think it's very unique, the history here. Tapping into the USC women's basketball history is tapping into the greatest players that have ever lived in women's basketball, not just at USC. So I felt like there was a really neat opportunity in taking this job. We needed to rebuild what USC women's basketball was about right now, but doing that at the same time, I thought could, create this connection to the past. Cheryl Miller has been, I can't even put in words how unbelievable she's been. What you saw in that video is what we have seen and felt up close. I think she decided to kind of come back and connect with us and be part of this. And it's gone sort of on overdrive since. She's so genuine. She's been an incredible mentor to me. She'll text me, she'll reach out, she'll show love and support. I think she's been that way for our players. For Juju to, in particular, have someone like Cheryl accessible to her has got to be unbelievable, because you and I don't know what it's like, to be the best player, in at your age, or the best player of your time, and for Ju to have people like Tina Thompson and Cheryl Miller that she can connect with on that is unreal. But I think one of the best things about us having some success and Juju getting some attention is that it shines a light on these women that deserve more attention. And in return, they've given us everything. And so I get goosebumps every time Cheryl walks in the building. It's Cheryl Miller, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it literally is the only equivalent. It's like Michael Jordan being around and like dapping you up. Like, her energy and her excitement means everything to us, and it's very, very, very genuine.
We talked to Rhonda Wyndham last week, and one of the things that she was so complimentary of when it came to you was that very component. Like, the first thing Lindsay did when she came was she got us all together. She jokes they're the aunties, and they got like 60 or 70 of them, of alums, that ended up at the UCLA game. You mentioned it kind of went into overdrive with Cheryl. Once the door did open, was it surprising to see, like, oh, there's Rhonda, there's the McGee sisters, there's Tina, there's Lisa? Like, was it ever overwhelming of, oh my God, there's legends everywhere and they all want to be involved here?
It's kind of always not overwhelming, but it's always awe-inspiring, right? Because that's who they are. Like, they have a presence. They are some of the greatest just women of all time. So I had a moment before the UCLA game. They said they had never been invited back, like, as a entity, like, for a game, and to do a pregame reception. And the moment we had before, right, to have this place sold out, to have lines out the door, and to have all these women here pregame, and they said to me, "We support you no matter what." It was unbelievable. And then, of course, to go and have this epic win, for everybody involved was incredible. But yeah, we said we were going to honor the national championship team in the first game, and that's when we made a point to make sure we could get the McGees and Rhonda and Cheryl and the people on that team, but then just all alums together to unite everybody. That pregame UCLA was something else.
So I wanted, actually, before I go back to the Scarsdale stuff, I'm always curious about this because the answers vary whenever something big happens to someone in the sports world. Who was the most surprising text message or phone call that you got after the championship congratulating you? And who was your favorite one that you got?
Oh my goodness gracious. Gosh. I mean, there's so many kind of cool ones. I mean, a lot, like anytime, like the Cavs obviously mean so much to me. So the fact that they're sitting around and watching it or, having it on, that means a lot for sure. But a big one is, I don't know if you guys know, but Mike Garrity is the head coach of the G League team now. We sat next to each other on the plane for a whole season. He's got little kids and he's a USC grad. So he hit me and he said, I was watching with the kids and they remember you from Cleveland, and he's got a daughter. And I remember Coach Lindsay as a female. So that was a really moving one. So shout out to MG. He's a great coach and a great person. That's a big one. That was probably, in some ways the most meaningful, most surprising. I mean, there's people from my childhood who reach out. Anytime, Woj from ESPN, who's breaking 27 million stories at once, is we had the whole studio watching the game. That's always cool.
That's dope.
That's awesome.
When, and he'll always he really watches. I'll be like, Padilla's block, I'm like, oh my gosh,
yes.
He could be breaking news on anything going on, and he's talking about Caleb Padilla. So those are some good ones.
I think what you're alluding to is that you have amazing relationships in this game and in this life as a coach of USC women's basketball. And I wanted to ask you because Mackenzie Forbes is a player that you recruited coming out of high school. She's from Northern California. So you were recruiting her to come to Cal, and she committed, right? She went to Cal. But she's back playing for you in her 5th season, her last season of college eligibility. She just was the Pac-12 tournament most outstanding player, a truly just incredible full circle moment for her, I think. I wanted to ask you about how you approach building relationships with people, because during the championship on Sunday, they talked about how you wrote a letter to Tara when you were an undergrad student, right? Looking for jobs in women's basketball. Yep. And, I believe when you were at UC Santa Barbara, you lost to her in the NCAA tournament in round 1. So, I mean, it's just there are just so many points in your career that I can point to that it's just it's not just this one little blip or interaction with this program, with this team, with this player, with this coach. It's over and over and over again in so many different ways. So how have you approached, building relationships, and how are you telling your players to comport themselves in this game too?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. To be honest, to tie into Andrew's question that I didn't mention, the text messages from former players at different schools. I mean, nothing's more meaningful than that. I mean, Alexis Gray Lawson, Rashonda Gray, Chen Yua, who was the first ever Chinese player, and hit me from New York. I mean, all over the place, players that I coached, like I said, at every school that I've coached at. I mean, the only thing I could say is there's no script on how to build relationships. You have to do it authentically. I mean, everyone will tell you, and I tell young people as they're trying to get in the game, handwritten notes or really striking up conversations with people. There's tips on how to do it, but nothing can come from anything that's inauthentic. And I do the best that I can to be present where I am and build relationships in that realm that then are lasting. And I think that's, the most important part of coaching. Anyone can learn X's and O's. Anyone can scheme or recruit or do what's checks off the boxes, but this is a human game and we spend so much time in it. What would we be doing if we didn't really care about the players, or if we didn't really care about the interactions? Because that's the heart of it. And that's why it's so meaningful when something like Sunday happens where the confetti falls and everyone's going crazy, because you hope that they're happy with where they are and what they've experienced, even if they don't get that icing on the cake, right? And they'll be happy if they know they're with the right people and then you give yourselves a chance for magic to happen. So I really invest a lot of time in the relationships. I try to be true to myself and meet people where they are, and get to know them and their story. And I think that's the best way to build relationships.
So I want to take it back to one of your original teammate relationships, Hillary Hayek Howard, Duke's all-time assists leader in women's basketball. There's an old urban legend around Scarsdale, where we both went to high school, that it was you and her against a certain WNBA Hall of Famer named Shamik Holdsclaw, who was playing for Christ the King at the time, I believe. What do you remember about playing her? And did you know then that she was going to be that kind of player in the WNBA?
So Hillary Hike, for those of you who don't know, she was, like you said, Hillary Howard, almost better known as Hibby Howard. I've seen a lot of basketball ever since, but who she was as a high school player was as good as anyone. I think Gino would agree with me. He writes in his book, this was the recruit that first broke his heart when she went to Duke over UConn. I credit her with my just love of the game of basketball because of everything I kind of experienced sort of watching her through her recruiting process and everything. So one of the best games, I should say, of my life, and I basically had nothing to do with it, was so we grew up in Scarsdale, which is a suburb of the city, and Shamik Holdsclaw and her group was from Queens, New York, and their club team was called the Liberty Bells, and our club team was called the Westchester Knicks, and we were playing them in a huge game. And we all knew who Shamiko was. I mean, she had Pat Summitt at every game. She was this like legend in the making. But Hibby has a game where she was just on fire. And while we couldn't stop Shamiko, they couldn't stop Hibby either. Hibby ended up with 39. Shamiko ended up with 28. We won the game. But I'm famous in that game for like waving off whatever our coach was calling and just saying 1-4 flat. Low 4, get out of her way. I tell people that was my first entree into coaching. Call me brilliant, but I just said get it in the point guard's hands and get out the way. But still remain really good. So the funny thing there is we beat them. They came back now to get to nationals. They had to beat us twice, which of course they did. And then they took her on their team to nationals. I'm like, this is how it works. Yeah. we all are great friends. And Shamiko, I still talk to her this day. And in fact, it was Hillary's Duke team upset Shamiko's Tennessee team that had been 3-time national champs to go to the Final Four. I was at the Final Four. I would have gone to support Hillary anyway, but I was there to like look for a job, and we were in the hotel lobby, and I'm walking by and someone yells, I see how it is. You know, your friend beats me and now you don't even give me the time of day. And I look and there's Shamiko and gives me so it's a full circle basketball community. But yeah, those were some good times. I was very lucky to have a very rich kind of basketball background, even though I wasn't that good. I was an Ivy League player back before the Ivy League was as good as it is now. Shout out to the Ivy League. So yeah, I was around some great ones.
That circle feels small, especially in the Northeast too. I saw Felicia Legette from Syracuse gave you a little shout out over on social media too. What's your relationship with her? And this coaching community is always very small. Yeah. Have you found that in the Northeast, maybe those connections are a little different just because of the development of high school basketball, or is it really become a national community?
Well, let me tell you something. I've been crying too much on people's Twitter feeds and everything going on. Then you bring up Coach Jack and you're like making me emotional. That is my real life, like big sister, so connected to her. So when I was at Brown, I decided I wanted to go into coaching. The story goes, I wrote a letter to everybody. Obviously Tara wrote me back. But Mariana Freeman, who was the coach at Syracuse at the time, also wrote me back. And I did an interview at Syracuse, and I ended up taking that job I was 21 years old when I moved to Syracuse to be the third assistant, but also be a grad student. I had lost my mom as a sophomore in college. My dad was awesome. My siblings were awesome, but essentially I moved to Syracuse to start this career kind of on my own. And Felicia Legette, Jack, was an assistant there at the time. Maceo, her son, who's now a pro basketball player, was crawling around the office. He was like 18 months. David, her husband, and she just took me under her wing. Like there were times when we landed in a snowstorm back from a game and I had a little Honda Civic and she would follow me home in her truck to make sure I got home.
Wow.
She invited me to her house with her mom for Thanksgiving when I couldn't get home for Thanksgiving. She allowed me to discuss, hey, why are we running that? What would you do here? What do you think? Like, she let me just kind of, I don't know, be me and grow my mind. And we became very, very close. And so then over the years, just to have someone like that supporting me, likewise, her career, I've watched, in awe as she's responded to adversity. And, after Indiana, she goes to Buffalo and builds that back up. And I couldn't be happier to see her at Syracuse, which is also my alma mater for grad school. She's the greatest of all time to play there. And so now see her do her thing. This coaching community is very small if you allow those relationships to be real. So I don't know if the East Coast is different than the West Coast. I feel like I've built a lot of relationships here over now the last 20 years. And just to see the relationships amongst players that have played against each other here, I just think it's basketball. I don't think it's East or West. I think it's women's basketball is a really cool community of the grassroots up through high school and college. And some of the stories are unbelievable.
Okay. You just talked about like the growth, right? The grassroots all the way to professional. Like, this is the moment for women's basketball. I mean, I think we've still got ways to go because I just think this game is incredible. The players are incredible and everything. But, back at Cal, like, I would say you were very, very early in terms of understanding the importance of like the internet, social media, and connecting with fans and connecting with like prospective players, right? And now you're in arguably second or first biggest media market in the country, right? In Los Angeles. And like we've talked about before, the Pac-12 is coming to an end and you're going to be in the Big Ten, that means that from coast to coast, like you've got coverage in this country. How are you using social and the internet now at, a school like USC? You're getting the number one recruiting class. You had the number one player in high school last year. How are you utilizing the tools available to continue to like spread the message of what USC women's basketball means and what you guys are doing?
That's a great question. And to be honest, like I've spoken sometimes, like, we go to speak to a company or whatever about how to build a program. And I'm going to throw it all the way back because I think this is actually significant for people who have become fans now when everyone is interactive on social. When we first got to Cal and I was an assistant for Joanne Boyle, Cal had 13 losing seasons in a row, and Cal was picked to finish 8th out of 10 in what was then the Pac-10. We sat around and said, okay, like, how can we build this? And we didn't have at the time what USC had, this shiny new building called the Galen Center. Tara had history, right? We didn't have that. What I thought we had, and Joanne gave me a lot of runway to kind of craft these like messages and things. What I thought we had was the here and now. I thought we had the fact that you want to play with Devanay Hampton and Ashley Walker and Alexis Gray Lawson. If you see, like, they were the it kids in the Bay who went to Cal. We did a lot with visuals. We brought in a photographer. At the time, it was more still photography, and it was old school media guides, like a coffee table book that you could send people, and people would be like, oh, wow, could I see myself there? And so we started to sell, if that's the right word, like, you want to be part of this versus we have this facility or we have this history. No, you want to be part of this. So 3 years later, we were 8th in the country. And again, that was on the back of a bunch of great players, who won games, and Joanne was an amazing coach. But then I go to Santa Barbara as a head coach. And when I came back to Cal 3 years later, to me, the world had become more digital. So I was able to say, okay, what was once the still photography and the coffee table book is now becoming internet, website, speaking. And I just always believed that the best way to sell your program is to open the doors and open the windows and say, this is who I am. This is who we are. Let's be authentic and show that and talk about it. And so that's what we did. And I think that I started interacting on social media. And I think, like, to me, it just allowed people to see kind of how I approach the players, or not a show, authentically. So now, sort of, I think since then, that's what everyone does. Like, everything's out there. So I've actually almost tried hard not to make it like a show, right? Like, we need to be, I love great visuals. I love the artistry of it, but I don't want anything to take away from what is real. And kind of really always make sure that we're represented in an authentic way. So now as we go to the Big Ten, We don't need to drum up any attention. There's no bigger attention grabber than Juju Watkins. There is no bigger brand than USC. There's no bigger stage than the Big Ten. And, CBS, the championship game was on CBS.
Mm-hmm.
Games are going to be on NBC. So to me, the challenge is to remain really genuine and let people into what we're doing. I think people love the stories of women's basketball. I always say we're a basketball team for 365 days of the year. Come see us on the day after a loss. Come see us on a prep day. Come see us on, a spring day. It's not just the showtime, 7 p.m. If you want to see the process, we're open to it. But now that the cameras and the stage has come, the challenge, I think, is to, make sure people still see what we're really all about, which are those, authentic interactions.
I'm interested because obviously now, as this has evolved, the transfer portal has become such a major factor in showing how your program is, selling it kind of in the way you mentioned how that has evolved into it. And this year you guys gained so much from the transfer portal, specifically with this roster. And I thought it was interesting. One quote when I was at the tournament covering, one quote that you said has really stuck with me. And it was after the final. And you said, yes, we have players playing roles, but we have hoopers. And that's something that had kind of just, for whatever reason, it just stuck with me ever since. I think there was times, it was a bar. That might be it. It was just a bar. But I think there was times, especially early on in this season, where it was like, okay, USC has Juju, and then people moved on. And now in the Pac-12 final, that game was maybe the biggest team win collectively that you guys have had all season. And I'm interested, I guess, in how cool was that in that sense to be able for those players to get that shine? And also, can you kind of take me through the process? Because it almost feels similar to when you were sending notes out and people trying to bet on you. And now the transfer portal kind of feels like that similar exchange in a way. And how can you kind of take your experience of trying to get people to bet on you when you're taking players from lower conferences and bringing them into a stage like this?
Yeah, I'll hit the transfer portal question first. I think it's actually like a chance for coaches. This is putting on our GM hats. I've always had an interest, as you guys know, the NBA and pro basketball and what that looks like. And that's not callous in any way. That's what it is, right? Like when you can rebuild a program more quickly because of the transfer portal. So after our first 12 and 16 season, we only had 6 players remaining after that year. We kind of said, this is what our culture is going to be. This is where we're going. Here are the 6, and we got to go supplement in the portal. And that group right there really, really bet on us because we're coming off of a 12 and 16 season. So Kati Sissoko is a pro. She believed that we could get it done in that year. Destiny Littleton, Okako Adika, all of them, right? Like that's a whole group, Rokia. But because we had to build in the portal in that year, and they were all grad transfers, we had to do it again.
Right.
But in doing it again, we knew we had Juju coming in. We knew a freshman class with Malia. And so going into the portal, you want to find the players that fit the best. It's never in college basketball assembling the 14 or 15 players you think are ranked a certain thing. It's assembling a winning team. So we went to the portal to say we want to find the best players that fit how we want to play, that fit the positions that we need. And so what I said about the roles thing is, first of all, I know everything's been said about Juju in terms of her ability, but what I need to say again is she elevates those around her. She's a winner. Her greatest argument, I think, for being National Freshman of the Year or a Player of the Year candidate is that she elevates everyone around her also with her own greatness, right? So no question, we have players that I would say play a role around her. But when I said they're also hoopers, like in their own right, there is a confidence level that within what I'm asking them to do, they are like, I don't want to use a curse word, but like they're mother effers. You know what I mean? Like Marshall, is as good at what she does as anybody. And Forbes and Padilla and Caitlin Davis, just to name those ones, right? Like they're not saying it has to be me with the ball in my hands all game, but we expect when we spray it to Padilla and she's open, we expect she's going to shoot it. And we all believe she's going to make 50%. So, or Forbes gets the ball and is a playmaker. She's an incredible secondary shot maker, who can become the go-to player at any time. Caitlin Davis, Daniel, won us that tournament with her, confidence. And that reminds me more of the NBA. So sure, there's the one guy making 30 million, but the other 2 or 3 players, you don't win without multiple playmakers, you know, and multiple big time players. And so we can call it a role. But I think whatever Mackenzie Forbes is doing is showing that she's a WNBA player on a team that is a Pac-12 champion. And so Juju has a role too. It's just bigger than most people in the country, right? Everyone's a role player, but you got to be ready to be a kick-ass player in that moment. And I think that's what we have. And I think that confidence derives from the fact that Juju believes in them, that Juju demands excellence from them. And the way our culture of our program is that we believe in everybody's ability and value. It's just everyone's role is a little different, what we ask you to do.
Seeing Forbes's post-game after you guys won, where she's talking about the bridging of the eras, I thought what was so meaningful as a dude who has kind of breathed Pac-12 his entire life is that USC bookended this conference. You know, the very first in 86 with Linda was a title. The very last in 24 with you is a title. You came in and made this program something that bridged all those eras from those 80s to those 90s to now. How did it ever sink in at that point, realizing that the team that arguably started West Coast basketball was the team to end it, and that there is some nice poetic symmetry with that?
That's crazy. Like, no, I haven't thought about it that way. And that's mind blowing, because I am like a historian of the game. Like, I am someone who cares about like those bigger narratives, who cares about stories about women. I mean, and stories about female athletes and stories about sports in general. Like, you don't always get that. Like, that just blows my mind. There's a lot of things in this career. You know, there are times I look down and see Tara on the other end, and I'm like, I'm really coaching against Tara. Like, she's the greatest coach in our sport, men or women ever. But yes, for someone like Mackenzie Forbes to be able to recognize, you know, I think she said we stand on the shoulders of giants. Like, I'm so honored. We're all so honored to kind of bookend it that way. And like I said, whatever attention it shines on, you know, Cheryl and Coop and Lisa and Tina and the McGees and everybody else, Rhonda, like, that makes us super happy. And I can't tell you, like, the way you just said it is like chills forever.
I'm interested as well. I know we're getting deep into this, so kind of to wrap it up, I wanted to ask about that, because that is one of the things that I left that tournament with, is like, unprovoked, your roster will bring up these legends, and the fact that what they're doing now, how important it is to them currently in the moment to be reflecting their greatness and to shine a light on that. Is that something that they just kind of came in, like, kind of understanding the history of this program? Or is that something you guys as a staff or as a program have been kind of instilling in them throughout the course of this season?
I think it's both. I mean, I think it's definitely been part of my messaging that, hey, like, we're not asking you guys to come to USC and do something that's never been done, but we're asking you to do it like now and bring it back from the depths kind of. And so, yeah, we definitely have talked about that and what's come before and what we have the opportunity to do. But I believe the genuine connections comes from these women showing up and being here and being real to our players. And that is super significant. It's just even Tina. So Tina and Cheryl were here, both of them at once. And it was really cool to see, like, even Tina said, do you guys even realize how big it is to have Cheryl Miller here? And I'm like, Cheryl Miller is a goat's goat. Like, it's just like crazy. And I think for the players to kind of see that, and I think we all know that Cheryl wasn't here for a while for whatever reason. So I think we all feel like being able to kind of bring her back and have her be part of it is huge. But I think it's something we've dreamed of connecting together, but it's the incredible young women I have now, but also these women who came before, and the genuine kind of time and presence that's been put in to connect them together.
Lindsay, we appreciate your time so incredibly much. Congratulations again on winning this Pac-12 championship, an incredible accomplishment. And I know you guys have your sights set on more. So we wish you the best of luck all throughout this March Madness tournament. Thanks. And like I said, thank you again for taking the time here with us.
Thanks. Enjoy it's got to be a little steadier for you guys. And then Selection Sunday's going to hit and it's going to go bonkers again. So
the work will be working.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah.
Right. That's right. So thanks for all you guys do, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yes, absolutely. And make sure you guys stay tapped into that work because we are just about to get rolling all over again with Selection Sunday. Make sure you like and subscribe here on the No Cap Space YouTube and all the links down below, the Twitter, Substack, and Playback. Stay tapped in with No Cap Space.